Hi, Alvin DeLeon here, and you are watching episode 66 of the 3-Minute Health Tip. And in this episode, I'm going to talk about dealing with the diagnosis shock. So a diagnosis shock, we're going to define here as an unexpected diagnosis that either you receive while sitting in a consulting room with your family doctor or any other practitioner, or it's a self-diagnosis shock because of a symptom that maybe you felt or you're experiencing and then you look it up. We talked about this in a previous video as the Google shock. So a lot of times that getting that symptom and then self-diagnosing that what you think it is something severe can create a shock in and of itself. And so how do we deal with these diagnosis shocks? Whether you've just been recently diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder, whether it's fibromyalgia, whether it's chronic fatigue, depending on what the diagnosis is, if that's a shock to you, and usually the challenge with these diagnosis shocks is that it creates a level of fear that we start to identify with that diagnosis. And for things that are long-standing, chronic, or autoimmune, there is no cure for a lot of these that we're told we now suffer from. And so that starts to create an impact of fear and anxiety as we go about living the rest of our lives with this new diagnosis. One of the key things in dealing with these diagnosis shocks is anything that you're going to do to minimize the fear is going to be important, because as we learn, knowing about GNM, the 5 biological laws, it's our abandonment existence conflict. It's the fear sometimes of these diagnoses and what's going to happen that leads to complications. And so how do we deal with these diagnosis shocks? I've come up with 3 things that you can do to help deal and minimize your fears and deal with these shocks. Number 1 is to settle your mind. Settle your mind. That pretty much means once you get told that you have a certain condition, you've been diagnosed with something, and that's a shock to you, on your drive home, your mind is going to be overwhelmed with information. One of the things that you need to do is just to let things settle. Let the fears come up, let the anxieties come up, and let things sort of fall away slowly. I know there's a previous video that I did where it's called Dominating Your Doubts. That's a good one to review. You can apply that methodology to try to calm your mind, or you just go back to basics. Just go for a walk, maybe do a meditation, sit silently, anything to just let things settle down. Let yourself process the information that you just received without necessarily feeling like you have to come up with a decision or have to do something right away. So the first step in dominating or dealing with your diagnosis shocks is to settle your mind. Anything that you can do to do that. The second step, once you're settling your mind, is to stop searching the internet. The common thing today, you get a diagnosis of something, you look it up right away, and you read all these things online that's often scary information that makes you feel more anxious and more afraid. And again, it tends to lead to these complications. And so one of the things that you want to do after you settle your mind, after you process this, stop searching anything. I mean, if you're going to look anything up, maybe you go to the learninggnm.com website if you're ready to process new information, but a lot of times you're not. So you just settle your mind, stop searching anything online. And the third thing, which is very important, is to share your fears, share your concerns. Find that friend, that family member, that person or persons that you can trust, that you can feel vulnerable with, that it's safe for you to open up to them about your concerns and fears, and they're just going to listen. They're not going to project their own fears onto you. They're not going to tell you what to do or start negating it, telling you not to worry or telling you you're going to be fine. They're just going to listen. And I know it's hard for a lot of us to find that 1 or 2 people in our lives to be able to open up that way too, but I encourage you that when you get a diagnosis shock, one of the great ways to allow you to be able to process and deal with it is to have that person there that you can share those fears with. These steps that I'm talking about here is really before you make any decision. I'm not telling you what you have to do or how to make a decision. I'm just saying once you get that shock of that diagnosis, whatever it is, first step is to settle your mind. Find a way to just let things settle without having to make any decisions right away. Next is to stop searching. Don't look anything up. Don't find it online. You'll have plenty of time for that later on. At this point, we just want to settle the mind. Stop searching anything online. And next, share your fears with a friend. I hope that health tip is valuable for those of you that have been suffering with some of these conditions or recently or any future diagnosis shock that you may get. I want to thank you as always for tuning in, and I'll see you at the next episode.